This is going to be the story of the statistician, female statistician, who revolutionized history and stereotypes, although not all of them. She debunked the myth of male superiority versus women, and so women's inferiority. But most of all, she also is known for not pushing too far. I mean, she did something very courageous, undoubtedly, but she stopped at a certain point. Let's figure out why and who she was. Her name is Alice Lee, and Alice Lee was one of the first women enrolled at London University. At the time, she came from Bedford College, and Bedford College had just started to admit women, and it was still college, did not get to the level of being university at the time, and she was studying there. She graduated first in science and then in arts. Now, at the time, one of the hottest debates on the square, so to speak, so public hottest debates, was men's superiority. And specifically, the whole point was that women should not be allowed to participate to academic courses or to academia. Why? Because they were not intelligent enough. Just put it very simply, they were not intelligent enough to afford this. So society should have spared their resources and not teach to women, not admit women, or teach them like more house-related sort of jobs, like how to clean, how to play the piano, and this kind of stuff if you could afford it, but not much more. And so Alice Lee was, as I said, graduated in science and was enrolled at London University when a pamphlet came out. Now, the pamphlet came out published by a eugenicist, so somebody who believed in the creation of the better race. And also he was a biostatistician, and his name was Pearson. And Pearson used to work at UCL, that is University College London. So much so that if you do right now go to this university, there's a wing of the main building or main sets or main set of buildings that is entitled in honor to Pearson. So Pearson was working there, and he published a pamphlet, published a op-ed, if you like, or an article where it says basically that yes, women should not be admitted to universities and to work in academia more in general because men were superior. Now, one of the sciences, pseudosciences at this point, that was very much in vogue was craniotomy. Now, to explain that in very simple words, it was the measurement of the skull. In other words, men's superiority was proven by the fact that men's skull was much bigger than women's. It is as simple as it gets. And what they used to do was something somewhat creepy, somewhat fascinating, that was going to the lab, I should say to the morgue at this point, pick a dead person and measure the skull from inside. So they would kind of empty the skull and then fill it up with all sorts of things. For instance, sand. But they also used rice, mustard seeds, and other types of seeds, right? And so in this way, they would measure the volume. At this point, Lee decided to measure the volume of the skull in a completely different way. Rather than going to the morgue and do all of that, to empty the skull and then fill it up with other stuff to measure the volume, she was like, no, let me measure the skull of men and women also, but let me measure the skull of men externally, right, without resorting to dead people. And that's what she did. So she showed up at Trinity College, where they were reunited there, at least 35, because we know she picked 35 men, intelligent men, men that had been in academia, had a career in academia, and with their consent, because this was not illegal, she started measuring their skulls. Also, she measured skulls of women attending the Trinity College and other women attending Bedford College. And what she understood was something pivotal. She understood literally that the skull varied in size, and so it varied within the gender of males, but also within the gender of females. And when you compare it, male skulls versus female skulls, you could not really find and track down a demarcation line that was unrefutable. In other words, the skulls varied so much that some men's skulls were bigger than women's skulls, or at least than some women's skulls, and others were smaller. And when she understood that, she proposed in her sort of dissertation a very simple idea. Either we consider some of the most intelligent men we have here as stupid or more stupid than women, or we just give up completely to core the idea that men are superior to women. And when she did that, she was at this point working for Pearson, because what happened in the meantime was that she started doing all of this when working under Pearson, because she responded to Pearson, to this article that Pearson had published, and Pearson was so impressed with her that decided to offer her a job. So at this point she was working at University College London under Pearson, pursuing a PhD, and that's how she measured, or she ended up measuring some men's skulls. And when she published that, she wrote that in the dissertation, Pearson approved. However, most of British society didn't. Among the people that disapproved of her work was Galton. Galton, the cousin of Darwin, just to make it clear, right? And Galton is very famous for a bunch of reasons, and you should look him up, but this is another place. Among which I would say also personality traits, because Galton had a huge intuition on personality traits. Anyway, the whole point of this is she read that in the dissertation, and they all went back and forth, right? So much so that Pearson had to guarantee for the rigor of her Alice Lee's work. And eventually she got her PhD. So she was on the right side of history, and she fought hard because the PhD was not granted to her for over 2 years, which must be nerve-wracking, excruciatingly painful, and must make anybody really upset. I can only assume. Anyway, this was back and forth for over 2 years, and it ended up with the commission giving her her PhD. However, when she had the opportunity to measure other races' skulls, she went back. She was in the end a eugenicist as well. She went back to divulge that these people's skulls were different, and that, in other words, other races were inferior. So we have to weigh Johns Hopkins University, and particularly a man that in 1909, this man is Franklin Moore, 1909, actually with a more sort of scientific approach, talking about fissures and talking about like how the brain is structured, says definitely no, there's no inferiority or superiority based on the skull or on the size of the skull. And that is how it ended, or allegedly, because I don't think that necessarily that was the end of the debate, considering nowadays political scene and what people say about other races. But this is how at least the craniotomy, the science, the pseudoscience that was so much in vogue, ended. And that is it, guys. So I'll leave the comments to you. Let us know what you think. Comment below. If you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. That would be very appreciated, and we'll talk some more next time. Bye!